Hi, everybody. The Super Bowl is coming up, and while my favorite team is not playing in the game this year, I'm still interested in learning more about the technology behind the scenes to help coordinate logistics and do some other stuff. So, next up on Today in Tech. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Today, we are speaking with Feroz Murcia, the CIO and Chief Information Security Officer for the city of Glendale, Arizona, which is hosting this year's Super Bowl. Feroz, how bad did I do on your pronunciation?
No, you did very good. You did very good.
All right. So, we were talking about the Super Bowl here at the office, and one of our colleagues knows you and suggested that we talk to you about a lot of the preparations that are going on behind the scenes. And I know you can't give me sort of any specific details, obviously, from a security perspective and things like that. But what is your role at the city of Glendale? And, walk me through some of the basics of how you guys are preparing for the onslaught of people that will be coming to the game.
So you kind of define my role, which is Chief Information Officer, Chief Information Security Officer. So my primary responsibility is to make sure that the technology footprint is operating as designed to deliver whatever needs to be delivered for our stakeholders. Similarly, it needs to be safe and secure. So we're not risking anything. And that's just a role independent of whatever event is taking place.
Right.
Now, event sort of, and in this case, Super Bowl, is such a huge event, so it amplifies the impact of what we do.
Okay, and so if you go ahead. Well, I was going to say on a typical day, like let's not talk about the Super Bowl yet, but on a typical, just a regular Tuesday, for example, you are supporting the infrastructure for the city of Glendale and all of the different services. So this includes public safety, traffic, that type of things, right?
Yes.
All of the regular departments, right?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So your traditional business systems that helps us run our business, to our utilities. We run a water utility, so we want to make sure that water is flowing properly, and public safety. So fire, EMS, and police. We want to make sure that they're all operating with all the resources available to them at all times, and certainly transportation.
Right.
We want to make sure that there are no accidents and road closures due to technology.
Right. And now this gets ramped up probably by like 3,000% in anticipation of the Super Bowl. Like, how many people do they expect at the during the Super Bowl week? Have they given you any numbers on that?
I don't have the exact official kind of estimate.
Yeah.
But I think the stadium holds somewhere in the vicinity of 60 to 75,000 people.
Okay.
So that's what I would anticipate, at least as a minimum baseline.
Yeah.
But my hunch is that it's going to be significantly larger number.
Right, because you also there's a lot of there's a week before the event.
Yes.
And there's all sorts of parties and events and broadcast crews now that go, and they ESPN I think does a whole week there, and all of the other sort of media people. Does that require do they sort of are they accessing your network, or do they just bring in they probably just bring in their own stuff, right? But
yeah, they bring in their own stuff.
Yeah.
And so it makes things easier, but it makes things a little bit more complicated in the sense that it's a geographic space in and around stadium that NFL manages.
Mm-hmm.
It makes things easier from the perspective that they do it every year, so they've got it really down packed in less of an issue. It's just execution, rinse and repeat. It makes it complicated because each location is different, resources are different. So for the host city to understand the nuances of how to operate with that kind of highly orchestrated event.
Right. Now, this is the third time that Glendale, Arizona has hosted. And interestingly, the Patriots, I'm wearing a Patriots sweatshirt today. The Patriots were in the last two that Glendale hosted. One was a bad game that we don't talk about. That was one of the New York Giants games. But the other one was the Malcolm Butler catch, which was an awesome interception to win the game for the Patriots. So based on the previous two hosting events, there's probably a playbook that you guys have in terms of what you can expect, the different roles that different departments will play. Can you walk me through anything like did you have this playbook ready to go and then you coordinate with all of the other members of the NFL and the broadcasters and all those groups? Like how does that work? Do you I imagine it's a bunch of meetings, right?
Yes. So if you allow me, I can kind of at a high level walk you through that overall structure.
Sure, I'll shut up for a while.
It's not confined to Glendale only, right? So you have NFL, and then you have all the 3-letter agencies one can think of, and there is a multi-agency coordination group, and within that multi-agency coordination group, there are regional working groups or resource working groups, and there are about 24 of them for different area of focus, cybersecurity, physical security, all that. So if you look at it from the perspective of was this structure in place in last two Super Bowl? Yes, it was in place. What is different now is the level of technology and its involvement and its use. That is what is different. So the playbook from the past was the playbook from the past.
Right.
You cannot take that and use it today.
But it does give you a sort of a baseline to start from, right?
Oh yes, of course. I mean, those working groups are still valid, and yes, it does give you a baseline. But if I can just draw a simple contrast, we hosted a tabletop exercise. So, and the role of technology in the previous two was that, okay, we want connectivity here, and the technology team basically went in and performed that. A lot of focus was on physical infrastructure, support of physical infrastructure, whether it's public safety, utilities, transportation, what have you. And those teams were leading the charge, and they still lead the charge in their respective area. But the glue that binds them all is technology this time. So literally, when we went through a tabletop exercise, there were about 128 participants in this physical activity that we hosted, our IT team hosted. Literally, you could take each and every use case, and it either started on the physical side, ended on the digital side, or started on the digital side, ended on the physical side.
Right.
And we sort of kind of played out those scenarios. So that's the difference from past to today.
Yeah. Would you say that over the past years, that whether it was the last time that Glendale hosted, but even just the difference between last year's Super Bowl and this year's Super Bowl, that the amount of digitization that has occurred has probably grown exponentially as well? I mean, in the enterprise space, for example, you hear about digital transformation and moving physical sort of methods and processes into a digital format. Are you seeing that too with sort of the Super Bowl prep?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. A lot of it in almost every aspect that you can think of, right? So,
do you have some examples?
Oftentimes when we talk about local government or any kind of agency or government, we talk about smart cities, smart regions, things of that nature. This is the type of event where these concept of smart city manifests itself in its full glory. So think about it here, when we are doing pre-event planning, if we look at it in the traditional way of doing it, the officers, fire safety professionals, they would walk the area and identify hotspots, identify where they're going to organize, meet, and all that. Everything is now digital. extensive use of GIS to identify, locate, place strategically resources.
Yep.
So we make this experience a much more richer and trouble-free for everybody who's there. And the
Go ahead.
one final comment, and the goal is to kind of bridge that gap between if you're physically there or you're virtually there. You should be able to experience that. The richness should be there in the experience, right?
Has the city looked into a lot of the smart city types of infrastructure and technologies ahead of the Super Bowl, or did they sort of invest in it or bring it in temporarily and then maybe let you keep it afterwards? Or, how far along are you in the smart city sort of evolution? Because I've seen other cities that have tried, that are doing smart city type of initiatives. I'm wondering if an event like the Super Bowl helps accelerate that adoption.
It does accelerate the adoption,
Yeah.
But there are quite a few initiatives that I can think of that were already underway, and we are utilizing them more in the space of public safety. And then that is part of smart city, right? So if you look at smart city, it talks about livability. Livability talks about public safety, resources available. So we have those in place, and we are enhancing those. And the way we are enhancing is that the new iteration of those technology have more AI-based capabilities. So we're turning those on to make sure that we are able to provide services in much more efficient manner. For instance, leveraging GIS to be able to, if a citizen today calls me and asks me, there was an incident here in my area, did you guys respond to it? In several years ago, if this was a question that came up, it would take us time to answer that. Today, literally point and click, and I can tell them exactly when an officer arrived at the incident, how many officers, how many squad cars showed up, what path they took, how long it took them, how long they were there, and when they returned.
Okay.
All that detail in a click of a button, we can provide that information. What that does is establishes trust between the community we serve and the officers who are delivering those services, right? So, and that's the technology already in place. You take that further. Now we can do from our intelligent transportation system, identify hotspots, right? One would think that high traffic area is more prone to accident. Surprisingly enough, in some cases in our city, it's not the high traffic area. So ability to identify those unique nuggets of information helps us plan better,
right?
Prevent incident and accident, and it enhances the livability of the city. And to me, that is what the smart city is all about.
Right, and then it's all that data too, and then you can analyze that data and then make improvements.
Exactly.
But do they have? Is there a baseline of data that they have for such a big event like the Super Bowl, or is this now where you're going to get all that data and then learn from it for the next time?
So there is a lot of data available.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example on how that information flows. So when the Super Bowl happened in Los Angeles, our team, the multi-agency working group, especially on the public safety side, they were on site learning from that. So it's not that my 2015 experience is going to form my strategy. Right. Well, we were informed by the current use of technology, how it was used, recognizing the current threat landscape, all those things to make sure that what we deploy as our resources to deliver an exceptional event is based on our current reality as opposed to what we did in 2015.
Right. Well, what I think a lot of people don't realize too is how this is a multi-year process in getting ready for a Super Bowl. When you took the job, I think you took the job of CIO and CISO in 2020, right?
Yes.
Were they already starting kind of like preparations at that point 3 years ago?
Yes.
And so you knew that this was coming up, right? when you took the job.
This was the reason why I took the job.
It was okay.
So-
That's good. It's not like they just threw this at you last week and said, "Oh, by the way, we have a big football game coming up."
So I was doing some consulting work prior to this with Elliott Metro, which is one of the largest transit agency, and some of my work was focused around Soccer World Cup and 2028 Olympics. We did some security grant writing and all that, so I was kind of familiar with, and I have a propensity to chase technology thrills.
Okay.
And that led me to Glendale.
You could just jump out of an airplane if you wanted to. So a technology thrill seeker. I like that term. That's such a neat thing. So is it more about the challenge or just the excitement around such a big event? Like, what is it that you are?
It's my putting myself in a situation where I have the ability to make a difference.
Okay.
To really stand up and say, yes, this truly had an impact.
Okay.
That's basically what I'm talking about.
So when you get back down to the sort of the logistics level of things, is it one of those cases where you succeed if nothing happens, like from a security standpoint, or is it just that you succeed if everyone gets to the game on time and people are happy and there's no long waits or things like that?
If it was just limited to my success,
yeah,
then I don't need to do this. I can work on some small little project that is on a cutting edge technology, and then that's one way of attaining glory, and there's nothing wrong with that. When you choose to work in a public sector where the resources and the drive to innovate and deliver something exceptional doesn't have the kind of resources and support as you would do this in a commercial enterprise.
Right.
So this has to be then done with a larger benefit in mind. So my success is not just me succeeding. My success is that the event goes the way it was planned and envisioned.
Yep.
And it's a fantastic event. People create memories and they remember their experience in Glendale.
Right. And then that's how you're gonna measure success, to make sure that more people are happy than unhappy, because there are always going to be unhappy people, especially for fans of the team that loses, right? At the end of the game, you just sort of shuffle them out quickly and you're like, okay, have fun, go home. Like on game day, do you have is there a coordinated mission control? Like you're not sitting at home just watching the game and waiting to get a phone call, right? Like you're there somewhere in the city, like monitoring things, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So at a high level, there is an emergency operations center from a city perspective.
Uh-huh.
So bunch of us, folks from my team and other teams that are part of this core, will be on site there. I will have from my area, I will have a smaller sort of kind of team. So we're creating now human cloud and redundancy will be at a different location.
Right.
So now we create a human redundancy. Similarly, if you look at public safety and all those, they have the similar kind of model. They have teams deployed on the ground, and then there are teams that are on emergency operations center, and then you have locations and places identified for different types of activity and response, right? So that's basically would be the structure. I would be in one of those teams, my deputy would be on another team, and off we go.
Okay, is that the biggest challenge then in terms of the computing? Is it the networking and the infrastructure and making sure that everything kind of stays up and doesn't go down? Is that sort of the big challenge for the day of the event?
I would say connectivity is the biggest challenge, because it doesn't matter how good your application is, how much AI you have. If you don't have the connectivity, then
Yeah.
is of no use.
Well, you mentioned cloud, cloud support and redundancy, and that got me thinking that I sometimes think that companies and organizations and they don't think about the redundancy, so that if something goes down, they don't have that backup plan. So it feels like you are thinking of that to make sure that if something does happen, that you've got a backup switch and fail safe, or if traffic starts hitting a certain number. So that's good to hear, because obviously if nothing happens, then you've done your job pretty well.
Exactly.
But again, there still must be some. Are you nervous at all ahead of the game, or do you have enough confidence with the teams that are doing this? That's almost like a trick question. I'm trying to get you.
Honest answer.
Yeah.
Every now and then I do dream about this.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And sometimes you wake up with a smile on your face. And it was. And sometimes it's a nightmare, and you wake up in cold sweat.
Well, so you're also a chief information security officer, and every time I talk to a security guy, I can't imagine you must have nightmare thoughts that are just going through your head about like the worst possible scenario or cybersecurity. And, we always ask the security people, like, what keeps you up at night? Cause that's always an interesting generic question, but, without giving me any sort of details, do you think that way, or do you think more about, all right, if something happens, I'm going to respond and we're going to get this?
So the reason why I gave you those two dream scenarios is because that constant conflict that two sides of my brain are having.
Yeah.
As a CIO, deliver fast, deliver this cutting edge technology, and the CISO saying, no, hold on, wait a minute.
Right.
Evaluate first before you put it into production. So that struggle continues to happen. And then you just have to find the right balance of risk taking and protecting the assets of the city. My biggest fear is the fear of unknown. Things that I know, I can do something about it.
Right.
Things that I don't know is what is scary. And then the technology landscape is changing so fast that honestly, it keeps you humble, and I cannot say that I have all the answers. What I have is at least the mindset within my team that we don't have all the answers, so we need to be vigilant.
Right.
And literally, I had a background that I took off for this session. It says Semper Vigilante, and I use that for every meeting, my executive meeting, my staff meeting. And we just operate from that mindset, and that's it.
Okay. But you do sleep at night sometimes.
I do. I sleep well.
Yeah, I'm just always fascinated by the security mindset, and you're right. You can solve what you do know, but then adapt for what you don't know, and then try to minimize the damage, or at least sort of respond and react, and staying vigilant is always great. Because again, if it runs smoothly, then no one notices, and that's what you want.
If I share with you this small story, so in our executive meeting, these are all department heads running different parts of the city. We meet with our city manager on a weekly basis. So I did a cybersecurity presentation. The slides I had was war in Ukraine, and the troop mobilization at the beginning of the war, and the troop mobilization and then the placement sometime in May, June timeframe. So what I was trying to point out is that oftentimes you see this head fake. So you say, oh, there is a focus on utilities and stuff like that. And I was pointing out is that bad actors know that now you're going to be focused protecting utilities,
right,
just like everybody was protecting Kyiv because the column of tank was moving towards Kyiv. But what happened was then the eastern region was attacked and taken over.
Right.
So that head fake is what you need to watch for.
Right. So so if we equate that to a Super Bowl thing, if you can't come out and say, "Oh, we're going to focus our attention on A, B, and C," and then the bad guys will be like, "Okay, well, I'm going to go over here to D. I'm going to just go."
Yeah.
And then or try to like do that head fake, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'll give you an example. So right before this discussion, we were having a resource planning meeting. One of the tasks all my divisions are doing right now is talking to all the technology partners that we use, whether it's deployed in service of Super Bowl or not, identifying a point of contact. So we have standard support. Now, this is exclusive point of contact for that event to make sure that we pick up the phone and we're not calling an 800 number. We're calling a named resource to say, mobilize, we need help. This is for our continuity of operation. This is not just Super Bowl.
Right.
So yeah.
Now, we were talking before we recorded, and you admitted that you are not a aficionado of football trivia. So I'm not going to ask you any sort of football trivia. I did notice a couple of cricket balls behind you, so I know that you are a fan of cricket. I won't. We could have a competition. And I wouldn't know any questions about cricket either. So, but do you think you're going to be able to watch part of the game, or at least enjoy it, or are you just going to like head down and not even care about the game at that point?
My hope is my team watches the game and nothing happens.
Right.
That's a luxury we're not able to afford.
Right.
Our job is to make sure that all the fans and the patrons are able to experience this right. So yes, we will be peeking and then looking at the game, but we're basically staying alert and focused in terms of making sure that the event is.
Now, I was going to ask you about some of the technologies that have come out probably since the last time, but since you sort of covered that, where you talk about going to Los Angeles last year, and you've known about a lot of the processes as well. Yeah. But I also know that Arizona is big on autonomous vehicles. I know there are some companies that do some self-driving delivery, food delivery type thing. Do you have some of that going on in Glendale, or is that a different part of the state? Like
we're talking about it.
Yeah.
There's no active initiative from a city perspective that's going on. There's a focus on the EV side of things.
Okay.
So we're looking at that definitely.
Yeah.
There is a discussion at a regional level around aerial vehicle drones and stuff like that, and how to use them.
Right.
We use them for public safety. We're not effectively using them for Amazon delivery of some kind or things of that nature.
Okay. Because I would wonder if those types of services might shut down during a big event like that.
Yes.
And definitely, I know that on the security side, like the FAA is all about no-fly zones, and they heavily regulate that. So, and you don't have to worry about any of that stuff, right?
We have our regional airport that would be used. We have Luke Air Force Base, home of F-35s. So we have to be really careful in terms of who we are allowing to kind of fly those things.
Right. Now, after the game, do you get to take some time off, or are you just on to the next project?
Well, the bunch of projects that are in flight, and their timeline doesn't change. So they will continue, but I will certainly take some time off. You need that little bit of a breathing moment to kind of decompress and
all right,
and hopefully enjoy the success of the event.
Yeah, and we don't know yet who's in the Super Bowl. We are recording this before the championship weekend, so there are 4 teams left. Do you have a favorite out of those 4? Is there a favorite amongst the staff members that work with you?
Now that's a sensitive stuff, and that can change loyalties. So I don't ask, but I can tell you an emotional favorite.
Okay.
So 49ers.
Okay.
It's just that they, after so many injuries, and they have this rookie quarterback, it's just kind of Cinderella story. So there's a little bit of that emotional connection there.
Okay. All right. So I'll tell you what. If I'm on the AFC side, I like the Bengals. So if the Bengals make it and the 49ers make it, I'm going to send you an email and we'll have a little side bet. How's that?
Okay.
All right. Feroz, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was a great conversation. I really appreciate it.
Likewise.
And that's all the time we have for today. Thanks again for watching. If you please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on the on this topic below. And go sports team, whoever's left. Thank you. See you next time.
Exactly. For the love of the game.